Every Dodge on this list exists because somebody tried to ban one. The most famous engine America ever built, the 426 Hemi, only went on sale to the public because a sanctioning body declared it illegal. That's the part nobody tells you. And 58 years later, the last Hemi car Dodge ever built died the exact same way, with a violation letter sitting on the hood. How that happened twice is the end of this story. 60 years of Dodge. 3 bans. I went through the NASCAR rulebooks, the Chrysler engineering files, and the NHRA's own violation letters to figure out why. 1965. The Hemi banned. 1971. The Wing banned. 2023. The Demon banned. Everybody will tell you the rules killed the American muscle car. At Dodge, the rules are what made it a legend. 1962. A Dodge Dart with a 413 cubic inch engine and 2 4-barrel carburetors. They called it the Max Wedge, and the owner's manual came with a warning no automaker would dare print today. Don't hold it wide open for more than 15 seconds, or you will break the engine. That's where we're starting. The Max Wedge didn't come out of a marketing department. It got pushed through by the Ram Chargers, Chrysler engineers who took a paycheck Monday through Friday and spent their weekends at the drag strip beating whoever showed up. And they won. In 1963, the engine grew to 426 cubic inches, and if you checked sales code 09, you got 425 horsepower on 13.5 to 1 compression. So high that Chrysler flat out told you not to drive the car on the street. That wasn't a warning. That was the sales pitch. On the quarter mile, the Wedge was king. On the superspeedways, it couldn't breathe. At 180 miles per hour, those heads choked, and Chrysler lost race after race to Ford. So they did something wildly out of proportion. They dug up the hemispherical combustion chamber, dropped it onto a new block, and built the 426 Hemi. It debuted at the 1964 Daytona 500. Richard Petty led 184 laps. Hemi-powered Plymouth swept the podium, first, second, and third, and the fastest Ford finished more than 2 laps down. That wasn't a win. That was a statement. Ford lost its mind, and NASCAR answered with a one-sentence rule. If the engine isn't sold in a production car, it doesn't race. The Hemi was out for 1965. Chrysler didn't negotiate. They boycotted the entire season. And Petty, the reigning champion, spent the year drag racing a Hemi-powered Barracuda. At one of those exhibitions in West Virginia, the car got away from him and went into the crowd. An 8-year-old boy was killed. Petty buried that car and wouldn't talk about it for decades. And this is where the story turns. Chrysler could have folded. Instead, in the fall of 1965, they announced something nobody had ever done. They were going to sell the race engine at a dealership to anybody who walked in. They called it the 426 Street Hemi. In a 1966 Charger, it cost $877.55, a quarter of the price of the whole car, just for the engine. Chrysler rated it at 425 horsepower. On a dyno, a properly built stock, Hemi makes closer to 500. They underrated it on purpose, so the insurance companies wouldn't put it together. In 1966, 2,730 cars left the factory with a street Hemi. Petty came back to NASCAR and won Daytona all over again. The ban didn't kill the Hemi. It put it on the street. But now Dodge had the most feared engine in America and no car worthy of it. The first one they built to try was such a sales disaster it almost killed the whole idea. The first Charger was a flop. Dodge took a Coronet, grafted a fastback roof onto it, and called it the leader of the Dodge Rebellion. What they got was a roofline you could sled down. They moved 37,000 the first year. The next year, sales fell by half, 15,788 cars. They had the most feared engine in America, and they dropped it into a car nobody wanted. So Dodge ordered a redesign. And what happened inside that studio is one of the great office stories in Detroit history. Dodge's chief designer, Bill Brownlee, insisted the new Charger stay a fastback. But a 26-year-old named Richard C.S. was shaping something else in clay, a double diamond profile that pinched at the waist like a Coke bottle. Brownlee hated it. He ordered the model destroyed and left for a 2-week vacation in Europe. C.S. and his team kept working anyway. When Brownlee got back, in C.S.'s own words, he exploded. C.S. figured they were all about to get fired. They didn't. The product planners ran their numbers and predicted the design would sell about 20,000 cars. It sold 96,100. The 1968 Charger is arguably the most perfectly drawn shape in American automotive history. And it exists because the design team ignored their boss while he was out of the country. Then Hollywood showed up. In Bullitt, the black Charger RT is the bad guy's car. Steve McQueen, the hero, drives a Mustang. And here's the part everybody misses. In real life, the Charger would have eaten that Mustang alive. A Hemi Charger RT ran the quarter mile in the mid-13 seconds, while the rest of Detroit was stuck north of 14 seconds. But the good guy has to win, so the Charger had to lose. Audiences walked out of that theater wanting the villain's car. From there, Dodge cranked out variants like they were getting paid per badge. The Coronet RT in 1967. RT for road and track. 440 Magnum standard, Hemi optional. The Super B in 1968, the budget special. $3,027, flat hood, heavy-duty suspension, and a cartoon B and a racing helmet on the trunk lid. You could order it with a Hemi. Exactly 125 people did. The Dart GTS with the 340 small block. Chrysler rated it at 275 horsepower. The NHRA took one look, laughed, and reclassified it at 310. And in 1971, Dodge made the funniest marketing mistake in company history. They named the sporty Dart the Demon and painted a little devil with a pitchfork on the fender. Church groups came down on them hard. The name lasted 2 years. Remember it. It's coming back. And in the fall of 1969, finally, the Challenger. Dodge showed up to the pony car party 5 years late, but with the longest engine list in the business. 9 choices. From a 145 horsepower slant 6 up to the Hemi. You could spec a Challenger as a grocery getter or as a weapon. Nearly 77,000 people bought one that first year. 356 of them had the Hemi. 9 of those were convertibles. Then there was the TA. Built for Trans Am, with a 340 breathing through 3 carburetors, fatter tires in back than up front, the first regular production car to pull that off, and a fiberglass hood with a scoop the size of a subway entrance. They built 2,399. A year later, a white Challenger was tearing across the Nevada desert in Vanishing Point, right up until it met 2 bulldozers. That movie finished the job. In the showrooms, Dodge was winning. On the racetrack, they were getting destroyed. That beautiful body at 190 miles per hour behaved like an airplane wing. And what Dodge bolted onto the Charger to fix it is still, 50 years later, the most ridiculous thing ever sold at a car dealership. The problem with the 1968 Charger was that it was too well designed. That deep recessed grille worked like a scoop. It caught air and dragged the car back. And the flying buttress roof with the rear glass sunk into a tunnel made lift. At 190 miles per hour, a NASCAR Charger wanted to fly. Drivers said it was like driving on ice. The first patch was the Charger 500. They filled in the grille with a Coronet unit, brought the rear glass flush with the roof, and built 392 to homologate it. It didn't work. Ford showed up with the Torino Talladega, Mercury with the Cyclone Spoiler 2, and ran straight over the top of Dodge. Richard Petty got fed up and left for Ford. So Chrysler quit asking stylists for help and started asking the people who worked on missiles. They put a scale model in the wind tunnel at Wichita State, then the full-size car in Lockheed's tunnel down in Georgia. What came out the other end didn't look like a car. An 18-inch nose cone, bolted to the front like the tip of a rocket, and a cast aluminum rear wing, 23 inches tall, 58 inches wide, held up on two fins so tall the car looked like a factory error. The nose made 1,200 pounds of downforce up front. The wing made 600 pounds out back. Now, the myth. Somebody has told you that wing sits up that high so the trunk can open. It isn't true. The engineer who drew it, John Pointer, explained it himself. It's up there to get out of the dirty air coming off the roof and into clean air. When people asked him about the trunk, he'd give them a funny look. Nobody ever asked him to make the trunk open. They asked him to make the car fast. Richard Petty, decades later, gave the identical answer, held his hand level with the roof and said, "To get it into clean air." The trunk clearing it was a coincidence. There was cheating too. Those scoops on the front fenders? Chrysler told NASCAR they were for tire clearance. They weren't. They vented the air trapped inside the wheel wells. They fed the officials a story so the car wouldn't get thrown out for illegal bodywork. They called it the Charger Daytona and built 503, the bare minimum to homologate it. 70 had Hemis, and they couldn't give them away. People thought they were hideous. They sat on dealer lots collecting dust and got dumped at deep discounts. Today a Hemi Daytona is $1 million car. Then came March 24th, 1970. Talladega. Buddy Baker climbed into car number 88 and ran a lap at 200.447 miles per hour. The first man in history officially timed above 200 on a closed course. And here's the best part, that car wasn't even a factory race car. It was an engineering mule. It started life as a press car, got loaned to a journalist in California, and got stolen. Whoever took it stripped it and left it on 4 milk crates. Chrysler hauled it back to Michigan, rebuilt it, and broke 200 miles per hour with it. In 1970, the Daytonas and Superbirds won 38 races. Bobby Isaac took the championship in the number 71. So NASCAR wrote ban number 2. And look at how elegant the knife was. They didn't ban the wing. They banned the engine. Starting in 1971, no aero car could run more than 305 cubic inches. The Daytona ran 426. You could keep your wing. You just had to give up half your motor. Not one winged car ever won another race. But NASCAR was the least of Dodge's problems, because at that exact moment, 3 separate forces were lining up against the muscle car, and not one of them had anything to do with racing. The oil crisis didn't kill the muscle car. 3 things did, and the first wasn't the government. It was the insurance industry. Starting in 1970, carriers stacked surcharges on anything wearing a performance badge. A functional hood scoop, letters like RT or GTS, an engine over 400 cubic inches, surcharge. Car and driver called it the insurance squeeze. There are documented cases where a young guy's annual premium ran higher than the monthly note on the car, and that young guy was the customer. The muscle car didn't die because people stopped wanting it. It died because the people who wanted it got priced out with a calculator. Then Washington showed up. The Clean Air Act of 1970 created the EPA, and the EPA wanted unleaded fuel. Unleaded meant dropping compression. Dropping compression meant losing power. The Hemi ran 10.25 to 1. It was never passing the 1972 standards without a full redesign, so Chrysler killed it. 1971 was the last year of the street Hemi. That year, exactly 70 people ordered a Challenger with one. And in 1972, the horsepower numbers fell off a cliff. Cars that advertised 335 came back with figures that looked like typos. But here's where almost everybody tells this story wrong, so let's do it right. A big chunk of that collapse was bookkeeping. Through 1971, Detroit measured power gross, a bare engine on a stand, no alternator, no air cleaner, no exhaust. From 1972 on, they measured net, the engine as it sits in the car, everything bolted on. Same engine, smaller number. So when somebody tells you the 1972 cars lost half their power overnight, half of that loss is arithmetic. The other half was real, and it hurt. In October 1973, OPEC turns off the tap. Gas goes from 30 cents a gallon to over $1. A Charger got about 7 miles to the gallon. In 1974, the speed limit drops to 55. You'd built a car that could do 200, and now there was nowhere to put it. Which brings us to the humiliation. Dodge introduces the Charger SE. It's a Chrysler Cordoba with a different grille. Vinyl roof, opera windows, crushed velour, 400 cubic inches, 200 horsepower. The nameplate that ran 200 miles an hour at Talladega was now selling comfort, and we hadn't hit bottom. Because by the late 70s, Dodge took the name Challenger, the E-body, the Hemi, the white car from Vanishing Point, and stuck it on a rebadged Mitsubishi. 4 cylinders, about 105 horsepower. That was the state of the American muscle car. But what Dodge did next was stranger still. They took the sacred names, Charger, Daytona, and bolted them onto front-wheel drive economy cars. In 1982, Dodge brought back the Charger name. They put it on a front-wheel drive hatchback with a 2.2-liter 4-cylinder, making 94 horsepower. The name that ran a lap of Talladega at 200 miles an hour was now on an economy car. And they dusted off Daytona, the car with the rocket nose and the 2-foot wing, and hung it on another front driver. This is the part Mopar guys would rather skip. We're not skipping it, because what happens next is the best thing in the decade. Lee Iacocca, running Chrysler, picked up the phone and called Carroll Shelby. Yes, that Shelby. The Cobra. The GT 350. The man who beat Ferrari at Le Mans was now fixing front-wheel drive hatchbacks in Michigan. And it worked. The 1983 Shelby Charger made 107 horsepower, 13 more than stock. They sold 8,251 the first year. Then came the Omni GLH. Shelby picked those letters because he loved saying out loud what they stood for. Goes like hell. In 1985 they turbocharged it. 146 horsepower in a 2,200-pound car. That anonymous little four-door was picking fights with Mustang GTS and Camaro Z28s at stoplights. Then Shelby went further. He bought 500 Omnis himself, all black, shipped them to his shop in Whittier, California, and rebuilt them by hand. The GLHS goes like hell, s'more, 175 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds. A Shelby GT 350 did it in 6.8. Read that again. In 1986, the quickest car Carroll Shelby had ever built was a front-wheel drive economy hatchback with a swear word for a name, and it beat his own Mustang. Now before anybody types it in the comments, yes, the Viper landed in 1992. 10 cylinders, 400 horsepower, no ABS, no traction control, side pipes that would burn your leg on the way out. Magnificent car, not a muscle car. It is a sports car, and that is a different list. The 2003 Neon SRT4 is not one either. 4 cylinders, front-wheel drive, 215 horsepower. But the SRT4 matters for one reason. Behind it was a new group inside Chrysler called SRT, and while the world watched them play with a Neon, they were building something else. A big sedan, rear-wheel drive, with a chassis borrowed from Mercedes-Benz, and an engine that had been dead for 34 years. The Hemi came back in 2003. In a pickup truck, a 5.7-liter V8 in a Dodge Ram. And before anyone sprints to the comments, yes, the purists are right. The modern Hemi's combustion chambers are not truly hemispherical. Technically, it is not a Hemi. Dodge trademarked the name anyway, because Dodge knew exactly what it was buying. Not a cylinder head design, a word that had been raising people's pulse for 30 years. 2 years later came the platform. And here's another myth worth killing. You will hear the modern Charger is a rebadged Mercedes E-Class. It is not. Chrysler engineered that platform. What they took from Mercedes was the 5-link rear suspension design off the E-Class, the front control arms off the S-Class, the 5-speed automatic, and the rear differential. Borrowed parts, not a rebadged car. The people who worked that program care about the difference. The first car to get the big Hemi was not a Charger or a Challenger. It was a station wagon. The 2005 Magnum SRT8 had 5 doors, a 6.1-liter Hemi, and 425 horsepower. You could drop the kids at school and light up the parking lot on the way out. Nobody bought them. Today they're worth a fortune. And in 2006, Dodge did the unthinkable. They brought back the Charger, with 4 doors. Mopar Internet caught fire. Heresy. Sacrilege. The Charger was a coupe. It had always been a coupe, and these vandals had bolted back doors onto it. The outrage lasted about 2 weeks, roughly how long it took people to realize you could now own a 425 horsepower muscle car and your spouse would let you buy it because technically it was a family sedan. The Charger became a phenomenon. Rappers drove it, politicians drove it, and so did half the police departments in America, and finally, in 2008, the Challenger. Dodge made a call that looks insane in hindsight. The first year there was no regular Challenger, no V6, no entry model, just the SRT8, a 6.1 Hemi, 425 horsepower, $40,000, 6,400 cars. They sold out before they reached the dealers. In 2011 came the 6.4, the 392, with 470 horsepower. And that's when Dodge realized they had a problem. Ford was selling a 662 horsepower Mustang. Chevy had a 580 horsepower Camaro. Dodge was bringing 470 to that fight. They were losing. And then, in an SRT meeting, somebody said out loud the one thing that would decide the rest of this story. The horsepower number had to start with a 7. The number started with a 7. Dodge unveils the Challenger SRT Hellcat, a supercharged 6.2-liter Hemi making 707 horsepower. The most powerful production car America had ever built. And it came with 2 keys. The black key limits the engine to 500 horsepower. The red one turns it loose. Sit with that a second. Dodge sold a car with a key that means you're not ready for this today. No marketing department on earth would sign off on that now. Then they started putting the Hellcat in everything. In the Charger, now a 700 horsepower family sedan. In the Durango, a 3-row SUV with 710, which is not a muscle car, but is the only school-run vehicle on earth that can do a burnout. And in 2018, they lost control completely. The Challenger SRT Demon, 840 horsepower on race fuel, a 2.7-liter supercharger, a factory trans brake, the first ever fitted to a street car, and a system called the Power Chiller that rerouted the air conditioning refrigerant away from the cabin to chill the intake air. The car would rather cool the engine than cool you. They deleted the passenger seat, they deleted the back seat, and if you wanted them back, they would bolt them in for $1 a piece. $1. A joke, printed on the option sheet. The numbers: a 9.65 second quarter mile at 140 miles an hour, NHRA certified. 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds. And off the line, the Demon lifted its front wheels clean off the ground and held them there for nearly 3 feet. First production car in history that could do it. Guinness World Record. Then the NHRA did what the NHRA does. Anything running quicker than 9.99 seconds needs a roll cage. The Demon did not have one. Banned. But look at what had changed in 53 years. In 1965, the ban was a punishment. In 2018, Dodge put it in the commercial. Banned by the NHRA became the tagline. And the name, Demon, the same name they had been forced to drop in 1971 because church groups complained, was now the entire point. Dodge was not dodging the rulebook anymore. They were collecting bans, and they saved this for last. The Challenger SR-T Demon 170, 1,025 horsepower on E85. 0 to 60 in 1.66 seconds. 2.004 G off the line. The most violent launch ever recorded in a production car. Price $96,666. Because of course it was. And the quarter mile, NHRA certified, was 8.91 seconds at 151 miles an hour. No factory production car had ever broken into the 8s. Not one. The Demon 170 shipped with red keys only. There is no black key. Dodge deleted the "you're not ready" setting, because at that point they had decided it was not their problem. And the NHRA sent the letter again. Now hold on to this, because it is the whole story in one sentence. In 1965, a sanctioning body told Chrysler their engine was too fast, and that it could only race if they sold it to the public. That punishment is the only reason the street Hemi ever existed. The ban did not kill the Hemi. The ban created it. 58 years later, another sanctioning body told Dodge their car was too fast to race. And on December 22, 2023, in Brampton, Ontario, the last Challenger rolled off the line. It was a black Demon 170, the last Hemi muscle car Dodge ever built. The Hemi was born from a ban, and it died holding one. That should be the ending. A perfect circle, 60 years wide. It is not, because what Dodge did next and what their customers said back rewrote the ending a few weeks ago. In 2024, Dodge replaced the Challenger with an electric charger. 0 cylinders, a speaker that manufactures a synthetic exhaust note. And the name they hung on it was Daytona, the same name as the car with the rocket nose that broke 200 miles an hour. The buyers answered. In the second quarter of this year, gas charger sales were up 404%. The electric Daytona fell 88%. A 6-cylinder charger is outselling its electric twin better than 10 to 1. And that is not even the engine people want. Because the engine people want is coming back. Stellantis has restarted Hemi production in Dundee, Michigan. They killed the electric Banshee, and they have confirmed the supercharged Hellcat 8 is returning to the Charger. Read that one more time, because it's the punchline of the whole thing. Dodge got banned 3 times for building cars that were too fast. NASCAR shut them down twice. The NHRA once. And not one of those 3 bans killed the Hemi. What nearly killed it was a spreadsheet. And what brought it back 60 years later wasn't an engineer and it wasn't an executive. It was the customers voting with their wallets. But there's something I left out. Every one of these bans had an instigator. In 1964, when the Hemi swept Daytona, NASCAR wasn't the first to complain. Ford was. When Dodge built the winged Daytona, it was because Ford was humiliating them with the Torino Talladega. Every car on this list exists because Ford forced Dodge to build it. Which means half of this story is still missing. That video is right here.